How's it going? My name is Tony Alarcon. I'm a primary therapist and program director here at Evolution's Treatment Center. We're a dual diagnosis facility. We focus on mental health and substance abuse. Today I want to talk about boundaries. It seems like these days we struggle to be able to define them and really understand how they correlate to our mental health and wellness overall, particularly when it comes to communication and just overall decisions that we make, life decisions that we make throughout the course of the lifespan. I'm not much of an artist, but let me give this a stab. Let's call this a gun, right? Bear with me. I'm not trying to make a living at art, but I think we all know what this is, right? It's a very popular word these days. Trigger. Now, if this is a trigger, what happens when we pull this trigger on our gun? Typically, we're gonna get a bullet to shoot out over here, right? That's the bullet shooting out. Trigger, reaction. Right? I pull the trigger, the reaction is the bullet flies out. Now, the problem with reactions, once a bullet flies out, the one thing I can't do is I can't pull it back. Once I've reacted, I can't just pull it back, right? So what we need to do is find a way to turn this reaction into a response. Well, let's get that right. Into a response, right? That way the bullet doesn't actually fly out. The problem is, I can't control my triggers. I can't stop when something triggers. If there's something that triggers me, I can't prevent that event from taking place. But can I prevent the reaction? Can I somehow find something in between the action of the trigger and the bullet flying out? Well, most guns have this little button right here. I'll give you one wild guess as to what that is. Safety, right? Most guns have a safety. Now, in the case of communication, why don't we call the safety the boundary? I will loosely define boundaries as the distance at which I can respect you and me simultaneously at the same time. In order for me to not have a reaction to my triggers, I must place a boundary, a line that I will not cross, because I can't control the trigger, but I can control the reaction. If I can set a boundary between my triggers and my reactions, what this will produce is a response. In which case, I'll give you an example. Somebody bumps into me in line, or somebody decides that they are going to attempt to attack me, right? Either verbally, emotionally, even physically. That can be a triggering action for somebody, right? However, as long as I have my boundaries in order, I can't control what this person says to me. But what I can control is what my response is. Now, I can respond in kind, which would be to attack them as well, thereby setting off their triggers, or I can respond by simply calling the authorities or letting somebody know. In treatment, it would be a behavioral health tech that I would simply say, hey, this person is bothering me, they are attacking me, they are insulting me. So now I'm responding, I'm not reacting, I'm not setting loose the bullet that might get me kicked out or might get me transferred out. Instead, I have actually set my boundaries, responded in a way that now the situation can get handled and I can actually find a positive outcome. Now, what happens with our responses? How do we decide the best way to respond? Because this is another critical part, right? Because anybody can set a boundary, but we still have to do something, right? Let's get to responses. Let's imagine we've got a couple cylinders beakers, if you will. I've got 100% of a triggering event that I've got to respond to. It's safe to say that when something triggers me, my initial reaction, especially if I wasn't aware that I'd be triggered and I did not have my boundaries set, I did not have my safety on, chances are it's going to be 100% emotional. And 0% logic. Let's call it logical, right? If I respond 100% emotional, that is not a response at all. That is a reaction. That is a chemical reaction. That is when gasoline meets fire. You understand? But how do I ensure that what I deliver is a response and not a reaction? Not a chemical reaction, but rather a well thought out response. How do I swing that? Well, let's assume I use the color red here to identify emotion almost as if it were temperature. You ever heated something up a little too much, especially in the microwave where you can't gauge how hot it is? What do you do to be able to actually consume it without burning yourself? Wait, right? Give it time, pivot, take a time out so that you can think about consequences, repercussions, the best ways to actually impact the situation so that you can increase the statistical percentage of actually receiving the outcome that you desired. The longer I wait, the more this figure reduces. Once I've got a solution, even if I can get this to 50%, then by default, I will be operating on 50% logic. Once I'm at 50% logic, at the very least, I have a mixture of a reaction and a response. At the very least, I'm not going to explode. Now, if I can do the ideal thing, which is to get this figure down to 25% or less, thereby getting this figure up to 75 or greater. These are the areas where I start making decisions that have a very high percentage chance of delivering my desired outcome. Because now I'm thinking logically, not emotionally. Now I'm responding. Now I'm not reacting. Now, not only have I taken that event that triggered me, but put the safety on it in the form of boundaries, I've also taken what could have been a reaction and started to mitigate and started to find a way to narrow it down to the best possible response, not just a response, but the best possible response. How many of you know that by the time I've cooled down long enough, and this is why big decisions often take a while, like marriage, like the purchase of a property, a new car, these things require 100% logic. Any area that receives a decision or a response that is 100% logical is going to produce dividends, is going to give you your desired outcome. So the important thing is to realize that pivoting is crucial when making big decisions. It's crucial when being able to not eliminate triggers, but get them to a point where they can be dealt with because you've decided on the proper boundaries and been able to actually deliver focused, informed, thought out, logical responses. These are the areas where relationships are restored, where health is brought back into a place where you can live a long life. These are the areas where good investments, be they financial, be they emotional, physical, this is where they happen when we're thinking logically. This often requires patience, right? But it's hard to be patient when we've already reacted, because typically then we get caught up in the consequences of events. So thereby it becomes a bit of a process. Practicing to set the proper boundaries. The best boundaries are the ones that grant you time when you've been triggered, that give you enough time to be able to actually think about the proper response. And then if you really want to do the ninja level reaction to triggers, you surround yourself by people who already understand this concept. You surround yourself with people that are constantly taking time to think about things. You surround yourself with people that not only have healthy boundaries, which does not mean rigid boundaries, does not mean porous boundaries, healthy boundaries, ones that leave a little space, because Lord knows also every now and then you're going to need a little bit of emotion. If somebody comes to you with grief, perhaps they've just lost a loved one, you can't come straight logical, right? There does come a point where you got to trickle in a little bit of empathy. You got to sprinkle in a little bit of sympathy. You got to sometimes go ahead and match their energy a little bit just to help people feel better. Sometimes in sports, sometimes in physical obstacles that require strength or that require maybe a little bit of aggression, even sometimes a little bit of a healthy dose of ego. You need a sprinkle of emotion, but you're better off being at 100% logic and then sprinkling the emotion in as needed than being 100% emotional and then attempting after the fact to bring in logic. These are the ways in which we start to make better decisions for ourselves. And in treatment, you're going to need it. You're going to need to be able to respond to triggers and not react. You're going to need to be able to establish healthy boundaries so that you have time to not just respond, but to truly customize your response so that it best meets and is most conducive for your desired objective. Right? And if what you desire, if what your objective is to get clean or to get your mental health in order, then I suggest that you set up the proper boundaries now so that you can have a little bit of time to think and make a logical decision, such as what I would recommend is come to Evolutionist Treatment Center. Mental health breaking down, substance abuse getting a hold of you, feels like you're consistently relapsing and like you don't really have a hold of these things, like you just keep reacting to impulses and you feel like you're prone to relapse because for whatever reason, the safety on your gun is not working. Come to Evolutionist Treatment Center where we can help you design healthy boundaries in order to put a space between your triggers and your reaction and hopefully transform them into well thought out, mostly logical responses that will inevitably and ultimately lead to a better, healthier you. Thank you for your time.